Hello and welcome back to episode 53 of the Rat City Radio podcast. It is, what's today's date? It's August 23rd here, but a month and a half. Oh man, we're getting close to 2 months of patch 1.1. Oh my goodness. So I'm your host. We are Perry the Pig. We have with us my co-host, Dread. Welcome back. Thank you for taking time out of your day.
Hello, this is Dread. And in today's podcast topic, I believe what you said yesterday, this is going to be like more of we're announcing kind of a break episode, correct?
Yeah. So you and I are both kind of getting antsy about what's going on in Last Epoch right now. We're both like coming to a close on the builds that we want to investigate, and we thought we'd take this podcast here for a couple things. First of all, to announce that we're probably not having one next week because we're going to take a break, do some variety content, see what else is going on in the gaming world. But this podcast is a great time to talk about what we liked about patch 1.1, kind of a retrospective, and then what we talked about yesterday, Dread, what's coming in patch 1.2, what kinds of things we'd like to see. Cool.
Perfect.
I'm gonna avoid. I think the most boring thing that I could say is what I actually feel, which is to say, I hope patch 1.2 they continue making the game that they want to make because they've made good decisions so far, and I hope they fix bugs, and I hope they like nerf the best builds and buff up the bad builds, and okay, all the generic stuff. It's so obvious, but we're gonna try to come up with other things we want to see during patch 1.2.
Yeah.
So
Before
spicy.
that, we can talk about what we've been up to.
Oh yeah. What have you been doing?
Oh boy. Okay. So last time we stopped the Dread Parade here, we were talking about, I believe, the Polaris Aurelist. We did not talk about the Cruelty Necromancer. Okay, and I know you watched that video because you commented on
I
it.
did. This was the Doombrand thing, right? Doombrand
Yes,
was
it
a
was
meme
the
a long
Doombrand
time
thing.
ago, and now it actually looks
Oh
good.
yeah. Oh, Doombrand, like I was doing some testing and it was doing like 40k crits on the dummy, like Doombrand itself.
Sounds fine.
That's great. So, okay. So essentially, the new relic, Cruelty, the way it works is it sacrifices your minions, okay, automatically. And you can run the chain node to make it chain, so you only pay for one sacrifice every 5 minions, which is great, right? That makes it much easier. But eventually, if you're trying to summon an absolute butt ton of minions, like I was, you will run out of mana eventually. And there's a line on Cruelty that says sacrifice does 80% less damage when you are out of mana. And of course, that's very bad for damage, of course, at 80% less damage, right? But there's a loophole. No one said you can't just use it to hit things with. And we can utilize Bone Curse. Bone Curse is a curse that procs when you hit stuff, right? So all those sacrifice procs, they might not be doing the most amazing amount of damage, but they're applying Bone Curse. And this normally isn't enough to scale a character because Bone Curse does enough damage, but it's been nerfed and changed so many times over the past 4 years. We could have a whole podcast talking about the history of Bone Curse. I think
by the way, and all the bug fixes of Bone Curse too.
Yeah, I think that would be hilarious. By the way, I think we should do that in the future. But essentially, Bone Curse here is doing our damage, but we didn't have enough damage with only just sacrifice procs. But it hit me, hey, I could play it on a Necromancer and utilize Doombrand. You don't know, you probably don't, by the way, because this is a very very niche thing inside Dreadshade's tree. Because people chide me for this, but I like playing non-minion necromancers. I know, crazy, throw me out of the room. But I have enjoyed utilizing Dreadshade for all of its power for you, specifically for the player, as it, you can make it apply to you. And that's a huge damage buff, like huge. Like it's comparable to Lich Form and Death Seal, and comparable to the stuff that Warlock gets. Like it's up there. So as long as you can find a way to actually do damage that's interesting and that can't be reproduced on the other classes, you can play a Necromancer damage class, damage like setup very easily. And here, Dreadshade has a note in it specifically for this build where it says Doombrand is applied to minions. So we apply the Dreadshade to a boss. Then the Doombrand marks the enemies right? And then when they die, they apply a little necrotic explosion. Now, normally this wasn't enough to build around because it didn't have enough damage, but turns out you can use that on top of the sacrifice proc. So not only are we getting the Doom Brain damage, which is a decent amount of damage as I tested, it's also procking Bone Curse as well. So every single time a minion dies around something, I get 2 Bone Curse procs. And turns out that's pretty good. But the problem was, it was a little too good, at least in the server's eyes, as it kind of destroyed my PC a lot, like a very large amount. But we managed to fix it somewhat by, it turns out, last epoch, at least for me, for some reason, was not using all of my CPU cores. So we had to use
this was a popular YouTube community post. People were reposting it on Discord. People were reposting it on Reddit as well, talking about like how to change performance issues. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and it was like such a big difference. It took me, because I was doing a Rye, right? I was doing Rye and the thing. It was completely unplayable. It was on stream, completely unplayable. It pissed me off so hard that I went and looked into it. And I was playing the build, and I had Task Manager open on the right side. And I was trying to figure out why, like, I was lagging, and I would go and do the boss fight, and I'd look at my Task Manager while I was lagging, and my CPU wasn't going up high. My GPU wasn't going up high. I looked at my CPU temps. They weren't going up high. Nothing was wrong. It was just the game. I've played AAA games before on my rig, and it's great, right? Like, no problems. It turns out, since I saw the CPU usage was so low, I looked it up. I was like, hey, is this using all my cores or not? And I found a Steam command. It's a dash use all available cores. You put it in the launch options on Steam. And that fixed it instantly. It took me from literally lagging to all hell and back to just smooth gameplay with some hiccups here and there when I'm doing shenanigans. It's like, great. That was the first build I played.
I love when you're so excited about the builds you're playing that you just like launch into the beginning of the next YouTube video. It's like, I feel...
Oh, yeah, it's great.
Like, being excited about something and wanting to share that much of it. I often, like, I describe the builds that I really enjoy playing as things that make you want to talk about them. They make you feel like your brain's getting bigger. It makes you feel like, I want to make a Reddit post about this. Like, I want to explain this. Like, hey wife, come here. Let me show you this build. I want to talk about it for a bit. Like, it feels so, like, I don't get to feel smart outside of my basement, but inside my basement, I get to feel smart all the time. And like, it's so good. I love that feeling.
So I did play another build, but what did you do this week?
Man, we've been on a melee kick. So I did some like melee Gathering Storm stuff, and all of them were kind of mid when I was playing as a Beastmaster. And like, the thing that I liked the most was the Frostbite Beastmaster thing, like dual wielding Ruins Penance, like a new unique item. It's fine. We jumped around looking for like different melee builds. We found a Forge Strike build that we were really enjoying, like a mana generator, mana spender setup. For like 2 days, maybe a day and a half, we ended up playing some absolutely atrocious builds on Sentinel, which is something that we're going to touch on later in the podcast as well. But like Sentinel, it's like, if you don't do the good thing, your build's absolutely trash. Like, we tried some crit Javelin, we tried some crit Spiral Hammer Throw builds, and like, they just did not cut it at all.
I told you, man. I told you the crit Spiral was garbage.
You know what? I tried it out, and I got personal.
I'm proud of you that you tried it out, even though I was telling you it's trash.
I can look at numbers, but until you play it, until you really feel like, you know, all these tier 7 modifiers that I have on my gear, and it's still just garbage. Yeah.
If you want to know why it feels terrible, by the way, I just want to let you know.
Oh, please.
So there's 2 problems involved with Spiral Hammers. The first being, when you throw out your hammers, right, and they go around, they do like a small amount of damage, sure, right? But the problem is they're not always guaranteed to hit the same target because, you know, they'll go around in a spiral, right? And I hate you, by the way. I see what you're doing. And they go around in a spiral, but the problem is they don't always hit the same target. But with the Enra's technique hammers, when they go and hit something, it dies. Yeah. Right? It just dies because it has the damage up front. And I have personal fucking experience with this problem literally just earlier today.
Oh, with your playing, there's like a bleed build you were playing, like too much duration?
Okay. I was playing bleed. Well, no, it's just how multi-shot scales.
Sure.
I was playing bleed multi-shot marksman, and it has end game damage. It has it there. It's there. Like it has enough damage now with all the buffs, all the changes. The damage is there. It's like at 1,000,000 ticks already on the dummy. But what happens is you spend 7 seconds getting up to that max damage. So your upfront damage is poop. And when you're playing a marksman, a squishy one, mind you, because you're playing a marksman, let's be real, right? You're trying to kill stuff, and it takes forever for it to die, even though on a boss you have plenty of damage because you just pew 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 pew. So what ends up happening is your build feels like ass because everything isn't dying, even though you have in-game DPS, but it's not there. It's not up front. And there is a way of doing it. There's like you can use puncture to pop, but like that's just an annoying playstyle, and it's like I'd rather not bother. But yeah, that's the same problem that the hammers have. Is like the hammers themselves individually have the same damage as one Enra's technique hammer, but the Enra's technique hammer hits in one hit.
Yeah, instead of like wanting like three hits or like 2.5 hits. So we tried like seeing some awful stuff. Like we took a node that I guess it has text on it. It's damage against stunned enemies, which is the worst kind of thing to have in the game. I absolutely like. Why is everything conditional? Why does everything on Sentinel feel like damage on a Tuesday afternoon when the sun's out and the moon's in this position? Like, can you please just have a more damage multiplier?
I mean, multi-shot had the same thing. It's like the one of the biggest modifiers on multi-shot right now is literally stand my ground, 36% more damage if you haven't moved in the past second. Yeah, let me just sit there and die.
Yeah. So I was playing Javelin too, and like all of Javelin's multipliers, like damage while you're a screen away, damage while you're standing still, damage if you pierce something, which is garbage against single target, and like the pierce doesn't even work with like the Javelin siege ballista node because it's pierce instead of AoE. Like it's just a the digging into Javelin makes me wonder how that skill's released because like it hasn't been updated since then.
The problem
I'm totally in your head.
We keep going into problems here.
Yeah, like, there's a lot of problems.
We are talking about a very large amount of problems in a very short amount of time frame, which causes me to say that over.
It's good. I like it.
But so we're the issue is like multi-shot, right? Multi-shot, javelin, hammer throw. All these skills were designed when the most dangerous enemy on my screen was like, I don't know, like, fuck. I'm trying to think. It wasn't diamond matrons for sure.
Oh,
it was
frostworm. Whoa.
Frostworm maybe, but like I'm saying like things you actually saw on a regular basis.
Sure.
Like what kind of like I'm talking like 3 years ago. Like this is the kind of stuff that was designed where like if you could stand still for more than half a second and not instantly die. Zarek, yeah, there's like it ends up becoming a problem where like these skills were designed in a completely different game, and you can tell it's like the with multi-shot, like stand still, deal more damage, a node that reduces your damage by 80%, but it's the only way to play the class and only way to play the build. A javelin's nodes are like javelin would have been great before flat added damage was added and throwing percent was a thing, and like mobs didn't have 50 billion HP. It's like kind of what we've been talking about with like the bosses getting a lot of HP. Like javelin 2 years ago in its current state would have been great. It'd been fine at like 0.9, 0.8. Sure, it'd be great. But like, like I don't know if you've seen the disparity between like I have been farming a lot of Reign of Dragons. Okay. With my current marksman, and my marksman right now does a lot of damage because it's bleed hail of arrows. It's already doing 3 million ticks on the dummy. The difference between killing the Bone Daddy and killing the Harbinger, it's like twice as long because he has like twice as much health or whatever. Like the amount of HP things are getting, and there are things that are falling behind because of that, right? Like, like remember in 1.0 we had the corruption rework that quadrupled, quintupled the amount of HP bosses have. And I think with the DR system that they changed, we'll talk about this more later if you want, but like with the boss DR stuff, the change, I think it actually is legitimately worse for some builds. Like, for instance, last patch, I would say that Cold.Werebear was a build.
Oh,
This
yeah.
patch, it's no longer a build.
Do not play
And
Cold Out Werebear.
yeah, it's crazy how big of a difference between this patch and like point 0.9 is in terms of boss HP. And that's why people have been, gravitating towards things that do absurd damage. That's why, we talked about this as well. We were like, oh, like you don't need this much damage. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm kind of getting red pilled. Maybe you just do.
You just
Maybe you just do need
build
that much
fucking damage, dude. Like,
Yeah, like it's crazy.
play the good skills, build damage.
Yeah,
That's all you really need. So you and
if
I
they keep,
both touched on this because like I had that video where I was
yeah,
talking about like kind of having shitty damage against Ampharoth and talking about like which
yeah,
how much damage you need to push through the phases. And then you highlighted that video as a way of like, okay, well, Electrify was good in the past because it had good clear speed, but kind of, it suffered on single target, but it had enough, which is the exact same as Cold Out Werebear. It had great clear speed, awesome quality of life, not enough single target damage. And like those builds just don't exist anymore. You can't play those builds.
yeah. I can explain why if anyone in Twitch chat is wondering, or if anyone listening. So the difference here is before 1.0 we had boss DR. So
Yes.
the way boss DR worked is bosses had a set amount of HP, and if you did more damage to them, they had more damage resistance. And this would scale the more damage you deal up to a certain point, but you'd have to like be a baseline cheating or bug abusing to reach over this point, right? To overwhelm it. Like the flurry stuff, by the way. Remember how that would like get past boss DR because it just right? And the reason why this was different is because when I dealt a lot of damage, like all of my fights were the same. But then if I fought with like a less damage build, I didn't have to deal with like 5 different life bars. I just had 1 life bar, right? So a 300k DPS build killed a boss around the same as like maybe like a 1 million DPS build or a 2 million DPS build. Back in the day, that was respectable numbers, right? And now with the boss DR system changed and corruption changed. So there was 2 changes that changed this. The first was modifiers got changed significantly. They no longer scale with corruption, and corruption is the main modifier. So you went from having, and this was the meta back in the day, you'd go to 300 corruption and bosses would have 150% more health and damage. You could give them absurd modifiers like 80% increased HP or stuff like that, but you would generally cheese the system and remove these modifiers, and you'd always be fighting bosses with a base amount of 150% more health and damage. And this allowed builds that dealt less damage to succeed and be fine, like Cold Out Werebear. Cold Out Werebear didn't need to kill bosses faster because it killed bosses as fast as the next guy. It was fine. But now that they've removed boss DR and added the ward, and then they also made it so bosses have generically more HP, what happens is for a shitty build, bosses take fucking forever, man. In comparison to what it was in 0.9, like if you had a build that has like sub 1 million DPS right now, if you're actually pushing corruption and like getting to like 700 or whatever,
you're gonna feel it fast.
Like you feel it. You literally feel it. It's like oh, look, one of their quarters of HP passes, and then they get 75% of HP. So I'll be honest, like I think that this change hurt low DPS builds more than they helped them, because the high DPS builds were just like, oh, now they have a fixed amount of HP that it can scale for. Cool. But the low DPS builds, they just got shafted so hard.
Now,
which wasn't what they meant to do, right?
When Mike was on the podcast, he did say like he's okay with the idea of there being like bad builds in Last Epoch that are kind of left by the wayside. But like, it feels like I gotta get to the list of topics today. It feels like it's just like here's like a list of strong builds and a list of bug builds. And as soon as you start like doing something else, it's like, unless you find something really awesome, which people sometimes do, but unless you find something really awesome, you're just like SOL, because Javelin doesn't have enough more multipliers on it to make crit Javelin work. Spiral Hammer
Yeah.
Throw, like, you can take the more hit damage versus stunned enemies on a Tuesday afternoon, and you can build stun chance, stun duration, time rot, shock chance, use a 3 LP Somnia, build stun everywhere, and get a hunt. Like, it's just, it doesn't, there's no like more multipliers for this. It doesn't exist. You can't do it.
And I think that this is highlighting a different problem that the game has had for a while, where the more damage modifiers are just starting to ruin the game overall. Like,
I mean, like on the
difference.
disparity on skill trees.
Yeah, it's starting to get to the point where it's just like there's no fun in it per se, because you end up having a problem where, yeah, I could play like, I don't know, like a Cinder Strike build like we were talking about the other day, but it only has one more damage modifier or two at most, and that doesn't scale well into endgame.
So
Like,
I want to truncate the conversation just a little bit, but like we'll talk about Cinder Strike because it's a good
yeah.
highlighting of what we've been talking about. So Cinder Strike used to have one more multiplier, now it's got 2 extra more multipliers. It's got 3. It's cool. Going from 1 to 3. It got like a mana cost reduction, and you had someone slide in your DMs telling you that they had a playable Cinder Strike build, and we looked at it, and their gear was really good. It was definitely good gear, like 3 LP stuff with good damage affixes. But like, the only thing that really changed was having those 2 extra more multipliers, and the baseline, like the floor for Cinder Strike, was so low previously that even giving it this extra love, it doesn't matter how good your gear is. Like, even if your gear is like 4 LP totally insane, like it's only gonna get so good because that's what the game offers to you.
And it's definitely getting to the point where it's just like we do need to talk about like maybe like the what becomes an issue, okay, is let's just say we're just like, let's just remove more damage, okay? If we just did that blanketly, then you just have skills like Frostclaw be the strongest, right? Because they have ways of scaling damage that don't involve more damage.
Or even things like Avalanche, like the Avalanche rework skill tree.
Yeah.
Like that mechanically changes the skill. It doesn't just have 17 different more multipliers like Earthquake does.
Yeah, so it's starting to get to the point where it feels like the things that were designed 2 to 3 years ago, like I feel like as though they don't know how much HP they gave things, because whenever I see them playing, right, they're playing at like 100 corruption or whatever.
I have a response to this, but keep going.
I would hope that they do, but with the changes like you saw with the Cinder Strike stuff, it's like that doesn't, like, sure, Cinder Strike got a buff, but all bosses got like 6 times more HP, man. Like, it's crazy.
All right, I'm gonna stop right here. Okay, so we've been talking for 23 minutes right now, and this is such good conversation. I was worried yesterday setting up the podcast, like, are we gonna have things to talk about? Do we need to like plan something ahead of time? But like, when everything comes together, it feels so good. Let's talk right now about things we liked about patch 1.1. So like things that did go well, things that didn't go well. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 9 broad topics, and some of the things we've already brought up are going to fit into this. So some of them are going to go fast, some of them are going to go a little bit slower. But we'll talk about this, and then we're going to talk about stuff we'd like to see in patch 1.2 after that. So let's start at like the very first thing that was in the patch note. Kind of a pivot from what we've been talking about a second ago, but how do you like the implementation of the evade, like the dodge roll?
It's been great. It's literally like, for instance, like that Shield Rush build I was talking about that I was playing, it made that build playable even with all the bugs.
Yes.
Because you could just evade out of the bug. Like any melee build I've played this patch has gotten significantly better because of evade. Like any build I've played this patch has gotten better because of evade. Because EHG has added a very large amount of things that stick on the ground or things that shoot the ground under your feet, that being able to move in that instance is required. And it feels crazy to me that I played this game before it existed. But the thing is, this is a self-made problem because they've added monsters like
Mm-hmm.
the poison artillery, because they have added the stuff like diamond matrons, because they've added all these things that target your feet, it felt like it was required. And it's like, well, like, don't get me wrong, I want to praise them for the idea of evade, but if things weren't as cancerous as they were, I don't think you'd need evade as a melee
I don't.
character.
I
So
don't.
it really becomes like, go ahead.
I don't want to call it cancers. I think like having things shoot your
Yeah.
feet and like having an active playstyle moving
Well,
around,
okay.
like
I
it's an
think
action RPG. I like that. This
yeah,
is fun to pay attention to
part
the
of
screen.
it, I think part of it isn't the mobs themselves, but the cancerous part is the amount of mobs that spawn that have those abilities and attributes. So, like for instance, you like have you ever just walked into a mono and you just see 6 green circles just go right under your feet instantly? I'm talking about stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's just like playing that as a melee build is just like and the lightning elementals too. They do like I think what they could do to fix it is if it's something that can spawn en masse, like archers or diamond matrons or anything that spawns en masse, like a lot of them,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
they could probably do less damage. Like, have you noticed? Have you ever been hit by one of those lightning elemental little shock AoEs?
It's a ton of damage.
There's a reason why people preferred 40k ward before this patch, and it's because of those things. That's part of it. And you don't even see it half the time because there's so much garbage on the screen constantly, because the green AoEs cover the blue AoEs and the blue AoEs cover, and it's getting to a point where it's becoming like a Tuhu game where I'm just like dodging bullet hell, and I like that, don't get me wrong, but at this same time, this is really just a self-made problem. Like with the evade, like, oh, like evade's amazing. Yeah, because you made the problem by
All right.
spawning 50
I'll
bajillion, you
have
know.
I'll have more of an optimistic opinion on it. I think it was an
Oh, I
amazing
mean,
addition to the game.
I think it's amazing. Like, I think it's amazing once they like actually like fix the spawning stuff and
Right.
maybe right.
I'm gonna posit that having all
Yeah.
those things targeting your feet, like I like that. I like moving around. I like paying attention to
Yeah.
the screen. It feels fun. It feels rewarding for using it at the right time. You know, cooldowns. The point at which I start to feel like you is when I feel like in order to engage with the nemesis, I need to clear the whole fucking map in order
Yeah.
to engage with the nemesis, because something's gonna kill me while I'm in this menu with a bunch of pop-ups on my face. Like, well,
Yeah. I think what happened was there was a lot of people that played 1.0 that never played Last Epoch before, and they all played like the bug stuff, and are like, "There's not enough density in my map," and they're playing like, I don't know, like the Healing Hands Divine Bolt thing, right?
that
And it's
clears
like,
3
there's not enough,
screens.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's not enough density in my map, right? And well, what happened was they increased the density, but they didn't like what's happening is they keep increasing these things like the density, the boss health, all these things, but they're not increasing what we have as tools as a player. Like Cinder Strike hasn't gotten a change since like obviously it's got more damage, but like the the daggers, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't even pierce, man. They don't even pierce. What, like adding density and adding density makes Cinder Strike worse, significantly so. So it's like it's stuff like that where it's just like, like don't get me wrong, like I like the density and all that, but what they're doing is they have a fine-tuned thing and they're messing with the nodes without touching the other nodes, and it's like, well, like maybe it'd be okay if Cinder Strike spewed out 1 billion daggers.
Yeah,
Maybe
maybe.
it would be okay if Upheaval didn't cost 1 billion mana.
And if
Like,
if it's OP, you can always nerf it later. But like,
yeah,
give me some toys.
Maybe it's okay if Giant Slayer didn't say 80% less damage instead, or maybe Giant Slayer is the way it normally works, and then they just like balance it around that. Maybe that could be the way to go.
All right,
Like,
so this is like 1.1 stuff. I'm gonna keep moving on. I thought
go ahead. You're
evade
good.
was gonna
Yeah.
be the shortest thing to talk about, but
Well, evade is just a band-aid fix to like a bunch of other problems. That's why it's a long discussion. Because like, I like evade. I love evade.
Yes.
I think it's a great addition, but it's just like the reason why they put it in, like they put it in for the wrong reasons, in my opinion. They're like, well, like I feel like as though
Oh,
they created
they
their
put
own
it
problem.
they put it in because they wanted characters to feel like they had a baseline mobility, so that they could
Yeah,
build boss
but
encounters based on that.
but why do characters feel like they need a baseline of mobility, right? In the
Well,
first
it's an
place.
action RPG. Like,
Well, I
come on.
agree. Yeah, yeah, but like they made a like it was fine 2 years ago, right? Like we didn't need
But
this many like
it was kind of
items, man.
slow 2 years ago
Yeah,
too. Like,
it was a
do you
slow.
want the
Yeah,
game to be more exciting? You want more stuff on the
yeah,
screen. You want to engage with
yeah.
it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna
Mhm.
move on to the second thing. So let's keep going. Like, what do we like? Well, like, what's a retrospective about patch 1.1? We've talked about this a lot already, but like, give me your 2 cents on the Nemesis mechanic and the egg. Do you want Nemesis to stay? Do you want the egg to stay?
I would hope that Nemesis would stay. We don't have enough endgame content as it is. It should just stay, right? I remember Diablo 4, they had their first season. It was like with like the hearts and all that, and they immediately removed it right after. Like I think they added it back in some ways. I'm like guys, your game doesn't have enough content for you to be removing content like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like I get it, I understand game bloat sucks. PoE people don't like the game bloat in PoE. I get that, okay, but I'd rather play a game that has too much in it than a game that doesn't have enough in it, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense. Like
You
I'm more,
need to get to the point of being bloated before you can start trimming it out.
yeah, and it's like I would rather it stay. I think it's a great mechanic overall. It's nice because it allows you to because remember that one dude who was like complaining that like he would like get like a 3 LP item and he'd slam it and it'd fail and it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's the end of the world and
Mm-hmm.
he's like I want to quit because of it.
I remember
Well,
Discord guy.
Nemesis,
Yeah.
yeah, Nemesis fixes that. Nemesis fixes that because it gives you because every single 0 LP boss item you drop is now an egg target.
I love that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and like for instance, you know, like the chest, the null portent. My
Yes.
first Aberoth kill, I killed him. I got a null portent. I put it in the egg and got T6 HP. That's
Done.
literally all you need.
That's
That's
insane.
it. It's over. Yeah, it's great. We're good to go. That has served me the entire time.
So
And
so in CUF you get like triple boss, like double or triple boss
yeah,
drops. You get like 3 twisted hearts from one boss. It's like, oh, only one of them has LP. Well, the other two egg it. You know, you get a bunch of null portents.
yeah.
I've got an entire stash tab of null portents, a stash tab of like harbinger axes. I've got a stash tab of this stash tab. Like just egg them, just egg all of them. See what
I
happens.
think that brings up the only problem I have with Nemesis, the only issue. I need more stash spaces, man.
And
Like if I'm gonna like I don't even want to play COF right now because I know it's gonna be hell. Like right now
I
I'm
have
playing
this.
trade.
I have this as a different line item in our conversation for tonight, but I'm going to
Oh
bring it
yeah,
up right now.
I will wait. Oh, go ahead.
I open up my stash tab. It literally takes 5 seconds.
I know.
I have to sit there and wait 5 seconds for my stash to open up.
I'm playing
Performance!
trade. Remember like last patch where I was memeing on you about COF MG. I was like, oh, I don't need a stash tab. MG is my stash tab,
Uh-huh.
right? Remember that? Well, that's no longer the case because my stash tab where I put all of my non-slammed items is 7 pages long.
Cool.
And the thing is, remember, I'm playing a lot. I'm egging a lot. I'm egging a lot of things, and it's still 7 pages long. That
Mhm.
tells you how many things I have in the backlog of egging. It's great.
Mhm.
I like the egging mechanic. I think all that deserves to stay. I think my original thoughts about the difficulty of them were misguided because I was playing Avalanche. And Avalanche stun locked them the
Mhm.
entire time. They feel a lot better when you're not stun locking them the whole time.
In terms
you know?
of difficulty,
Like,
you mean?
yeah, in terms
Yeah,
of difficulty,
gotcha.
I think they're fine. I think I'll be honest, Nemesis has never been my issue. It's been the rest of the mono when I'm trying to fight the Nemesis has always
Mhm.
been my issue.
Mhm.
Like you just noted earlier.
Right, you got to clear the whole thing before you can deal with the
Mhm.
pop-ups. So we talked about this a little bit. My next thing that I want to touch on is boss ward and boss DR. Was this a good change that they made to the game? Was this a bad change? Should we revert it completely?
This was a hard one.
I like it. Okay, so let me go first then. So
Go ahead.
I think it's a good change. Boss DR, as it worked in the past, it messed with leech which was weird
Mhm.
because like you actually dealt less damage, so like you had less sustain as the fight went on, as you pushed through the boss DR. It also was not communicated clearly to the player what was going on, and there were lots of questions being like, "What the fuck is happening to my damage when I punch the boss here?" So like if you hit the enemy once and you deal half their health and damage, if you hit them again, you'd expect to kill them, but in the old system you didn't. So I like that it's like it's clear what's going on. It's well communicated. It doesn't mess with your leech or sustain or anything like that. I think it's a fine system. I don't mind
Yeah.
change here.
So for me, I'm going to criticize Ellie how I have criticized Torchlight in the past. So, Torchlight Infinite, the reason why I think it's doing so terribly right now, I love the game, but I know it's not doing as well in the West as it should be. And other than the monetization nonsense, which is an entirely different conversation that is not meant for this. But one of their biggest problems is they would do one patch and it'd do fine, right? And they would have a problem with the game or something. They'd be like, okay, we don't like this aspect in the game, let's change it. But what would happen is it would change the whole entire game at once, every single thing. So playing Torchlight in one patch is a completely different game than playing Torchlight in the next patch. And they did that like 5 times in a row. And what it taught me is sometimes too much change is bad. Too much change is bad because what happens is like, oh, like this change that you just did messes up with the change that you did a patch ago, and like this change you did messes up with the change you did 2 patches ago, and now you need to like go fix that problem. And they kept doing this and they kept getting a large amount of bloat of changes where things were like arguing with each other constantly, and it felt terrible, right? And if you wanted to play the game, right, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna load in, like for instance, Path of Exile is a good example of this, where it doesn't matter what league, doesn't matter like what change. I can log into Path of Exile and have a very close to the same amount of experience that I have. Sometimes it's a good thing that it's the same experience, right? I log in and I play PoE. And LE has been like that for a long time now too. But like, so what happened was they changed corruption, which was a huge change.
Mm-hmm.
And it completely fixed boss DR entirely. It was no longer a problem.
Because
Like
bosses were so tanky that you weren't feeling the DR as
because
much.
yes, like that was the problem. Boss DR wasn't the problem. It was the amount of base HP bosses had, and they fixed it. And it was great. It was great. Last patch, boss DR was non-existent if you were actually pushing relevant content. It was great. It was like you'd see it whenever you'd like level up a new character and you had like a bunch of good gear. Like who cares, right? Like whatever, fine, right? Or you did like a T4 Jurla or something like woo, it took like an extra 5 seconds. But then they're like, oh, boss DR is a problem. Let's fix it. And now they have the corruption, which we have, and now we have that on top of the boss ward. And bosses have so much absurd amounts of HP, and things haven't been changed accordingly because, uh, like the power creep, right? You had the power creep of 1.0, you had the power creep of 1.1 on top of that, right? Compounding on each other. And now you have the problem where, like, there's just some things that just don't exist like we talk about like the cold dot warfare, right? The javelin stuff that doesn't exist right now, like in its current state, stuff like that. And it's because bosses were in a good spot last patch because they made the change with boss DR in mind, like I would hope so. And then they made another change without letting the last change kind of write out, because I'll be honest, I don't know about you, I liked it last patch. I thought it was fine.
So
I
you
felt
you
like I
you'd
didn't even need
rather
it.
you'd rather go like one more patch and see how other builds adapt to the corruption changes before
Yeah.
immediately making a change to the boss DI stuff.
Yeah. And it's like what happened was it was such a shell shock twice in a row that we just haven't had time to settle down. And it's weird because Ellie has been criticized in the other way where it hasn't been making enough changes, but this is such a fundamental change to the end game content that it has caused ripples in the game where I can look at a build that like the build I'm playing right now, I have like 3 to 4 million ticks on the dummy, and I still feel like bosses take too long. It's disgusting. It's just like how am I in a position like if I played this last patch, I would be like posting kill montages and it'd be great. And this patch is just like it's a snore fest.
A slog.
Yeah.
So something I mentioned that I was going to bring this up previously. Maybe this is a good time to bring it up right now, but this is
Yeah.
last epochs or EHGs,
Mhm.
where they feel like a build is doing well.
Oh, one moment. Let me mention some positive things about the boss war
I
thing, 'cause
love positive
it's not all
things.
negative.
Okay, you go first.
Okay. So I like that it communicates it.
Oh, good.
I like that. I like how it looks and feels. They did a good job on that. I
All
like
right.
how like it feels.
All right.
I think I think if they made the boss ward change last patch instead of the corruption change, we would have been in a better spot. Or maybe now that like the only problem is they added 6 times the amount of health on bosses on top of multiplying their health by 6 last patch. I think if they just did that one time, it'd have been fine. But doing it twice in a row, like I think this change is good. I just think they need to look at how much base HP bosses have now that they have like 6 extra HP bars. And it's like, well, like you shouldn't be like killing bosses based on like their ward bars. Or like no one wants to fucking spend 4 minutes on a boss fight. Let's be real, right?
Mhm.
No one wants to spend 4 minutes on a boss fight, right? Like I'm going to kill the
Just
boss.
like action RPG, video game, what your time
Yeah.
is worth. That's a lot of time.
There's a little bit of a dissonance where like they're like, oh well, the boss is real HP, that's his real HP, and the boss ward is just simply there to like stop you from killing it instantly and all that. It's like, no, the boss ward
It's the same.
essentially it's HP.
It's the same.
It's HP. It's just HP. It's just in a different way. And it's just like I think that failed immensely. I think that is just like, oh yeah, like people aren't thinking like, oh, this is the HP of the boss and like now he has an extra phase. No, it's just his HP. It's all the
So
same.
let's the thing that I wanted to mention is going to segue into like the next thing about 1.1 that we want to discuss before we go to 1.2 stuff. And that is like when EHG talks about successful builds, consistently they talk about 300 corruption. They say like if you can do 300 corruption, which lines up with the end of the Harbinger storyline. They're like, you do the end of the storyline, you kill all the Harbingers, you do Aberoth. Like that's the point where they feel like this is, if you can conquer that, a successful build. And what I'd like to talk about here for just a moment is the corruption gain speed, which I know you just talked about in a YouTube video, saying like it's way faster than it used to be. And I'm going to mention Slowromancer in here in a moment just here as well. But it's like corruption gain speed and oh man, what was the other part of this? Corruption gain speed. Oh, and favor gain, which is a important thing to talk about because that's why we talk about as players, we have a different threshold for what we call a good build. EHG says 300, and we say there's one of two
300.
there's one of two things that you and I and people like us say for a good build. We say a build needs to quickly clear 1,000 corruption because that's the place where you get the best favor gains. That's where like the graphs line up for diminishing returns. Whatnot.
I would say 700 to 1,000. I would say like
sure.
If you're quickly doing 700, like I would say that's good enough.
Love it. That sounds like a good build to me. The other thing would be like, can you dumpster a boss? Like 10 seconds or less, just like boom, you know. Can you
I would say if you're killing like the Harbingers in under a minute, you're fine.
Yeah.
They have plenty of HP.
Sure.
Like,
So that's what you and I think about in terms of like calling a good build. EHG says 1,000 or says a 300 instead. But I want to get your feel on, I guess your opinion on the 1.1 change to how quickly you can push corruption and favor stuff.
So this was like 2 different changes that happened in a row. The first change was we got envies and needles. So envies allowed us to get a boss instantly if we want to, if we have enough glyphs of envy. Like for instance, I use these like it's crack cocaine and I have 172, so they're essentially infinite.
All right, we just got demonetized, but go on, keep going.
That's fine.
Great.
It doesn't actually check this much in the video.
We're also not monetized.
manually Oh, we're not. I should do that. You're right.
You should do
But
that. Okay.
now, okay, the next thing is we got needles. Needles. I'll let you explain needles.
So needles just make it so that you gain your gaze of Aerobus faster, so that you kill the boss once, you do a shade of Aerobus, and you get your full maximum amount of bonus corruption at that point. Which means
Yeah.
that if you're on a fresh character, you can push corruption so fucking fast that
And
you're gonna be at the high corruption before you're ready for the high corruption. And in your words, I'm just gonna steal them out of your mouth. You said like, I don't want to nerf myself, and I'm not used to in Last Epoch having to nerf myself in terms of how high my corruption is. Should I lower my own corruption? In Slowromancer, that other video game that you and I both touched on in the past, it feels like that game has done a good job of making it so that like the difficult content is gated by difficulty instead of by time investment to get to that fucking point. I made a YouTube post, like a YouTube Reddit, or a YouTube community text post in patch 1.0 saying like 1000 corruption takes way too long to get to. I was never personally going to go there. It's such a time commitment that I don't care about getting that far. I'd rather just reroll to a new build. And this patch in patch 1.1, if you want to be at 1000 corruption, I'll see you in an hour. You'll be there. It's
great.
Wicked fast.
Well, as long as you have a build for it, obviously.
Yeah.
As long as you have a build. That's the most important part is like it with like the change in difficulty does actually scale pretty well with the envies and the needles. Like if you just bump up your corruption by like 300 and you're level 80, it's gonna suck dick. like for a little bit, like it is gonna suck dick. But so the next change that fixed everything about the game ever, we had envies and needles, which were already good, but then they introduced it a way now where now if you are at more than 40 corruption in a timeline versus another timeline, if you do one timeline out of the center, a Oribus will spawn instantly attached to that one.
Amazing.
And it will catch you up 96% of the way ish to your other mono. Now, this means that if you're at 300 corruption, and you have a base mono at 100, and you went and did one mono, it would spawn an Oribus, and you can go do them, and it would jump you up. Now, that itself is phenomenal, okay? Because that fixes the base Harbinger grind.
It does.
Which we are all complaining about. It fixes it instantly. And the biggest problem with the old Harbinger grind was what you would happen is you would have a mono that was at 200 corruption after doing like your fifth mono or whatever, right? Your fifth Harbinger. And then you'd go back to 100 again. And then you need to it's not a difficult thing. It's a time gate because you need to rush through all these monos to go find an Oribus.
It was a huge complaint of mine early in the patch that I didn't just have like some kind of boat or a ferry or some kind of mechanic that brought me to my Shade of Oribus, and they did it. That's exactly what they did. So good.
Did it. But this has ripple effects because now I think there's a way of speed stirring corruption, not just speed like we're doing, but like even worse. Well, not worse, but like better or whatever you want to call it. Faster. What you can do.
I assume you're talking about ping pong here.
Yeah, I am talking about ping pong.
Okay,
if you want to explain it, go ahead.
Well, ping pong, so like your catch-up mechanic you're at 300 and 100. You do the 100, which gives you catch-up mechanic. And it's going to consume some gaze of Aerobus as well. So maybe it gets you 340 or something.
So what you can do is you can do one mono and get it to 100 corruption. Okay, let's say you get it to 200 corruption, I mean. Okay? And then you go do a 100 corruption mono. When you spawn the Oribus, he will bump you up very close to 200 corruption. But you can use Glyphs of Envy and Needles. Before you do the Oribus, you do one mono, then you use Glyphs of Envy. Like I said, they're infinite at this point, right? You use a bunch of them. Do a boss with a needle in. Get 5 gazes or whatever, or 6 gazes or whatever you get, right? And then you get slingshotted an extra 50. But then after that, what
You just go back to the other one.
you go back to the other one or a different mono and you do the same thing. And what happens is if you are at a 100 corruption mono and you have all these monos, right? I can't remember how many there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You have 9 monos. And if you add 50 corruption, because you can go to 100 corruption, do the Orbis that's at 100 corruption difficulty, bump up your corruption by, like, you can ping pong, but you can do it in base corruption at 100 if you do it with all your monos across the board, and you can get up to 600 corruption without dealing with a single 500 corruption Orbis, 400 corruption Orbis. You don't have to deal with a single
that's
one.
funny. Yeah, you can.
Yeah. If you really want to do that, and like if you have the needles and envies, you can just keep doing it too.
Hold on.
It's crazy.
It's funny. Is that good? Do you like this change? I like this change. I like having difficulty gated by difficulty as opposed to rather than a week grinding up one corruption at a time.
It's fair because you need envies, and so the base version without the envies and stuff is fair, right? When you get up to your first 10 harbingers, that's fair. And it only gets supercharged when you have the glyphs and the envies.
Which means you have a strong character because it's like your second or third character. It's like twink leveling. You want to
killing harbingers.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
And I think that's fine too. And it's been what we've been talking about the whole time. And they gave it to us, and it's good to go. It's like one of the best things about the patch.
Yeah, love it.
It came in like what 1.1.1 or whatever or something like that. Like, yeah, it was like this is like the kind of thing that's just like. But my problem is now, like you mentioned earlier, is I am not used to gigantic jumps in difficulty when I'm leveling a tune.
Yeah.
Like another character. Because it's just like, oh yeah, what if you went from like 100 corruption to 400? Wouldn't that be funny? And you're level
oh man, like this character feels terrible. What's wrong? Why does it feel so? Oh, I'm at 500 corruption.
Now, what's great is this goes into the next topic that you wanted to talk about, which is favor, which is also tied to XP, which XP is the reason why this feels so weird, because XP has been essentially screwed for the last 4 years.
I don't know exactly if it's screwed for 4 years, but what I want to touch about.
I'm talking about like when you're like level 40 and a level 68 zone. And you're like level 70 and a level 100 zone, and you're at like 200 corruption while you're level 79, that kind of thing.
So in the past, there was a mechanic where the experience tomes in the monoliths would help you catch up to the level of the monolith, and that was removed in patch something. And that's one of the reasons why, like way back when, you wanted to start doing monoliths really early, because it'd give you bonus experience when you got this experience. So that doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, so favor is tied to experience, and like whether you're in Merchant's Guild or in COF, this is a hot topic in the COF community. You want to engage with prophecies because they're fun and they're not deterministic, and you want like the right base type, the right modifier, and then you also want some clean affixes that you can work with, and you don't want to break it during the crafting process, and then you have to slam it on something and then like find your 2 or 3 LP and hope you hit the slam. Like there's so many layers of RNG that go into getting the kind of thing that's remotely usable for your build.
Yeah.
And like you want a bunch of favor in COF to be able to roll all that RNG.
Yeah.
And EHG just nerfed favor gain this patch, which is why you see so many people just like, why would I play a shitty build instead of just blasting 700, 800, or 1,000 corruption and actually getting favors so I can engage with the system?
It's a good thing overall. I think it's good now that like the rating of a build is how good it does in endgame content, an actual endgame content, and not like 5,000 corruption.
Yeah, okay,
I think that overall is a success. I just think that, I think favor, they have it balanced between MG and COF. Like favor in COF now, especially after the book change, and favor and MG are the same 1-to-1.
But
COF
fucking needs it.
Needs significantly more. Now, I complain sometimes. I joke around that like I'm not getting enough favor as
Yeah,
an
yeah.
AG player, right? Because I need to sell and buy things. But I can put up 4 tabs of items for like let's say like 200k favor. Well, 200k favor what gets you like what 2 usable items?
Maybe.
Maybe. And and I think they can't try to like either they need to make favor better for CLF where they get more favor, or they need to change the numbers on all the prophecies. I think the reroll cost is absurd. And I also think having prophecies in the arena is absurd. Like, there's so many absurd things I see about like COF that just keeps me away from it and not want to engage with it. Not because it wouldn't be fun or anything, but because I do this for a job and like why impede myself
There's
significantly?
the easiest thing to point to for this is like there's a CUF prophecy that gives you at least one LP on guaranteed on the next unique
Yeah.
item you get, and it costs 59,000 favor, and
By the way,
it's the hugest bait. It's
and
awful. It's awful.
to give you an idea of how mismatched the prices are, okay? You get a guaranteed 1 LP item, right, for 60k or whatever.
Woo!
I can buy 2 legendary already slammed items for that price.
Literally
They're 30K
getting
each.
literally exactly the item you're looking for.
I can buy 4 LP items before like with the same price.
Mm-hmm.
I can list like to give you an idea, let me just do the math real quick because I think it's funny, okay?
As you look that up, it's
I can
like
list 300 idols on the market for you getting one LP item.
cool. The prophecies are fun. I want to engage with them. Let me just that's it, right? It's like if you
Like-
stupid developers, you made something fun. Let me do it. I want to, right? That's it.
I think they need to like stop the oh well favor needs to work the same everywhere, or they need to either fix how favor works for both factions moving
But
on,
listen,
or they need to like
having two different factions of trade versus CUF was a very bold, dynamic.
I agree. I enjoy it.
Yeah,
I love
it's
it.
an awesome system, and I said in the past, and I'll say now, if they can pull it off, other games will copy this in the future. And like they're still in the midst of pulling it off. It's a hard thing to do, but
I think-
we're never going to get it fixed unless we complain about it. So we need to complain.
I think that like you're never gonna reach parity, but I also said that HP and Ward are never gonna reach parity with each other. But instead of it being like a 3 times margin of how good it is compared to what HP, now it's like maybe 10% better than HP or 20%.
I think like we don't even have to talk about this, do we? Like hybrid builds with like Life and Ward, you and I both have been liking those. The new unique items like Seed of Ikidrasil, we have Wall of Nothing, we have like both Twisted Heart builds and Life Regeneration, Vessel of Strife builds, like all these like hybrid items. Give me more hybrid items. They're great.
And COF needs that kind of change, if that makes sense. Like it needs like that kind of magnitude. And it's like I'll be honest, like a lot of other things need that
you mean like the magnitude
change.
of rebalance between Life and Ward is the magnitude of rebalance between COF favor gain and Merchant Skill favor gain. Okay, I got you.
Why does it cost 400 favor
to reroll?
like reroll when you're forcing people to reroll so much because of all the garbage mods in the system?
It's a good question. All right, so there's hopefully this is a short thing, but I got 3 more topics that I want to move on to 1.2 stuff as well. So my last 3, hopefully they go quickly. One is channeled skills. We have mana regeneration. Wait. Mana regeneration applies while you are channeling. Have you done anything with this? Has this changed your life? I know you like Warpath. Don't use the next 25 minutes to bitch about Warpath. I hate it too. But like, has the mana regeneration while channeling done anything for you? Have you engaged with it? Does it enable anything?
Can I say the honest truth?
Tell me.
Well, I'm gonna say two things. One, I haven't tried a channeling skill much, and two, the reason I haven't is because why would I do a channeling skill when the meta is favor per hour, and that requires me to be moving, and also
Well,
the enemies incentivize me to move, right? Like it's just like it's kind of a disconnect. It's like why would I sit there and channel
when
when
I
I could just play a build that does damage when it's either moving or in a big attack
yeah.
and not have to stand there and take all the damage? Because what happens is channeling builds end up having attacks, right? Like for instance, recently a good example of this is I played a build that was very very obnoxious on the eyes. I'm trying to remember which one. Oh, you know the elemental Nova fire frost claw like
Yeah.
ignite thing I
Yep.
played before
Yep.
everyone hopped on the bandwagon
And you were using like
on
TP
that.
procking it.
Mm,
Oh, and the
and
reunification was
it
procking it.
was
Okay, yeah, yeah.
screen
I
wide
remember.
AoE, and it was like all over the screen. That build had the I can't see fucking anything tax on my defenses. So I had to invest more into my defenses to make up for the fact I couldn't fucking see anything, right? On the screen. Because, visual clarity is very good in last epoch because, things put things under your feet and you'd like to know when those are being put under your feet, right? And channeling skills are the same way where they have the I need to stand still sometimes and that lightning little AoE that goes under my feet shouldn't one tap me.
Mm-hmm.
And they just freshly nerfed the one skill that went against the grain in this regard, and
For
that was
channeling?
Ghost Flame. And it's Ghost Flame, and it's because they did the dumb decision to make a channeling skill that has all that DR, but also let it move.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you could just give the DR for when you're standing still, and then if you take the moving thing, you just like lose the DR.
Mm-hmm.
It'd have been fine. It'd have been. I think that's what they did. I'm not entirely sure. I need to go look.
Oh, for patch
But now,
1.1, they nerfed it like 17 different times. So
yeah, they nerfed
good.
17 different times. Good, I agree. But now, why would I sit still and channel that fucking thing?
So
Right?
I had ideas, I had things that I was interested in doing, and I gotta say, like the channeling skill, I like the change because it gives you one more avenue which you could fix a problem if you have one, and I like having more options. I think that's a net positive.
Yeah,
But
I
like
like the mana regen stuff. I like that.
yeah,
But
the one skill that I wanted to play was Warpath, and just to give you insight into all the terrible builds we've tried out, I tried Warpath, which is in and of itself. So it's got no more multipliers in it unless you do, Void or Fire, but I wanted to do Fizz. And the thing that I discovered was that Eye of Reen has been nerfed because of Healing Hands, proccing Healing Hands, and specifically because of Gel Cores. People were using Eye of Reen in direct cast and melee attacks. And like it just got obliterated. And not only did it get nerfed for everything else, but it got nerfed for Warpath because apparently Warpath is too good. It now only I guess Eye of Reen, it doesn't have the right text on it. It doesn't work with indirect casts of melee attacks, but it also doesn't work with channeling attacks, which is intentional.
no sense, by the way, because it's a
No.
direct cast. It makes a direct cast. You are directly right clicking.
And like,
like
so you want to dual wield Warpath, and like, okay, so there's like one good Warpath build out there, and it's like two-handed melee, Apathy's Maw, void stuff, but like. I want to dual wield. I want to take.
There's the flame burst one.
I want to take percent increased damage, and I want to dual wield, and I want to have 0 defenses. And EHG says, well, you can do that, but I'm not going to give you damage in return. So you can't.
Wait, we just got something on high here. Go ahead and read it. That's amazing.
Oh, I didn't see this. Let me scroll up real quick. This is from EHG Justin, who just popped up in Twitch chat, saying, I wanted to touch on a topic Dread has brought up in the past. In our efforts to rework Volatile Reversal and rebalance Sentinel without it, I'm on the edge of my seat. We're very aware of the tremendous power that it gave. We're scattering a lot of buffs throughout Sentinel to compensate, especially for damage over time.
Yay. Good. I mean, I kind of expected that.
Okay.
Like the thing is like I remember seeing someone bring up Volatile Reversal and they said they're nerfing it and we know it's strong, so we're fixing it. And I've been very mean in the past. I will apologize for this. I've been very mean because I've seen what they've done to Surf and Strike. Okay, when they say rework and rebalance and stuff like that, right? So if it's like a Surf and Strike level change, it's like oh my God, my poor Sentinel, right?
Well, so
But
lots of people hate volatile reversals because it feels mandatory and they hate the rubber bandy part. But some people, even like Mike from EHG and like myself and people like Lizard who've been playing for a long time,
I love reversal.
I love reversal. It feels so good to like not even the damage. Like I mean the damage too, but just playing with it makes it feel like this is player expression. This is mobility. This is like I can use it while looting. I can use it in my hideout. I can use it for bosses. I can use it for repositioning. Like it's a really good skill, and I want to feel rewarded for using it. Oh man, I hope it. I hope a lot of things. Okay, so I said channeled skills. I wanted to talk about two more things, but I'm going to skip them. I want to talk about Forge Guard. We've talked about Forge Guard. We know how we feel about it.
I think it's a lot better this patch.
It's a lot. I think it's a lot better. I think Forge Guard in 1.1 is equivalent to Shaman in 1.0. I think it needs one more pass. It's not there yet. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was Sork. Holy shit, it's a Sork world and we're all just living in it. Why would you? I don't know.
Well, the Forge Guard, its passive tree now makes sense somewhat. Like you look at it,
it needs another pass.
It like even the passive tree would be fine. I think it would be in an acceptable state if the skills made more sense.
If Forge Strike were better, if Smelter's Wrath were better.
This is just old design ruining new design per se, right? And I don't think this is indicative of what Forge Guard will feel like.
So you were saying previously, like you'd rather have one extra patch to shake things out before you make two subsequent changes. So like maybe we keep Forge Guard's skill tree where it is right now, and then like let it shake out. Like maybe buff Smelter's Wrath.
Change the skills. Like I think the skills.
Okay.
Like so, like for instance, to give you an idea, I'm gonna pull up Void Knight here real quick. So when I play a Void Knight, right, I have a very strong theme that now works very well. I can look at all 5 of Void Knight's skills right now. Erasing Strike, good skill. Very one-trick pony right now, but good skill now. Anomaly, good skill. It's like it needs the same treatment that Reversal's getting, but by the way, but still. Devouring Orb, it's been nerfed so many times in a row and it still exists. Great, like cool. Like it still exists. It's still cool. And then Abyssal Echoes, right? Abyssal Echoes is like it's almost there. It has some problems because it has the same problem that Cold Out Werebear had, where like it had plenty of damage before, but then bosses got 36 times more HP or something stupid like that. So like it just needs like a little bit of touch up in that regard. And then Reversal, I don't even need to talk about that.
But comparing that to Forge Guard, it's like there's no unity.
And then we can compare it to Forge Guard, like Forge Strike. You played it; it's very close. It is now very close. It is so close. There's so many different things you can do with it now. Like you can either do the minion stuff, you can do the ailment stuff, you can do the crit stuff. You can use it as a buff. It's very close to what it needs to be. It's just like I think Forge minions. And this is just a minion topic. This is a completely different podcast, by the way. Like a minions. Essentially, due to all the changes to bosses and all this, minions are squishy. They are squishy. They are too squishy. They die instantly, and that is what is keeping Forge Strike back as a skill. Okay, so cool. Smelter's Wrath. Smelter's Wrath is currently beating the allegations of the "it sucks to stand still." But that's because it gives you 100% more armor, then 60% more armor, and 60%, I think, increased in 60% more endurance threshold. It has screen wide AoE, so, cool. It does a lot of damage. So I think if they were to rework channeled skills, I would look at Smelter's Wrath and see what it does and why it feels so good. It's because you sit there and channel it, and it does something impactful, okay? But obviously there's like problems with the Axe Volley that could get some work. I feel like Axe Volley is kind of like in a weird spot. Like non-circle Smelter's Wrath sucks, and like Furnace Furnace has the problem where it was designed before bosses got so much more HP. Like it just doesn't do enough damage these days, which is fine. It's like whatever, okay. And Ring of Shield, I think Ring of Shields is great. It just has a lot of dud nodes. It just has a lot of dud nodes.
You know,
I think it's a good skill.
As you talk about this, one of the ways that I think about skills and like the kind of love that they need is how many, like what's the heat map of the skill? How often do you take this compared to that? And like which branches or which nodes are just completely dead? Like I've been playing Lethal. I've got so many examples. Lethal Mirage is a skill that I'm messing around with right now. And like the whole bottom right of the skill tree, the whole bottom right quadrant is just like you can cut it off. Nobody would know.
Yeah.
Like things like Devouring Orb have nodes on the left side of the skill tree that you basically never take. Things like Abyssal Echoes, like the top nodes aren't particularly impactful. Things
well, that's because they changed it from the original usage of Abyssal Echoes. Remember?
They did. Like, and like what is it? Like Smelter's, I don't even know what the Smelter's Wrath skill tree is.
Smelter's Wrath, it just has like the problem with it is if you're not doing the circle, it just sucks. And I would like that to change.
I was going to mention Anomaly because Anomaly is two completely different skills.
Anomaly is the poster child of like 10% of the tree being insanely relevant, and the rest of it was designed
you years ago. You only ever use the right side of the skill tree, and if you deleted every other node on the skill tree, a couple people might notice.
By the way, this is a compliment. By the way, I just want to let you know that this is a compliment. That like the design that's happening now is just making us look at the design from 3 years ago and being like, wouldn't it be nice if it got a new coat of paint? That's like what you want. I would rather us look at like Anomaly's skill tree and be like, wow, this could be different and it'd be cool, instead of wow, like this new skill sucks in compared to Anomaly.
Well, so I think about skills. I think about skill sigils as well.
Well,
and like what skill sigils might be.
Ring of Shields here, okay? It has this whole sub theme where shields deal fire damage over time.
Right.
It's a cool concept that just hasn't been modernized because it was made like 3 years ago. If it was modernized, this would be fucking sick. Like Infernal Golem. I don't know if you've ever seen Infernal Golem with the AoE. That works. That's a fine skill. It does a little less damage than you'd like, but like it's the same concept except you have Ring of Shields. Like I think that'd be a great thing.
What if your shields ate your forged weapons, so you generate more forged weapons and eat them? I don't know. Sure, done. Great.
And then like Manifest Armor. Manifest Armor is an enigma. It's just like, I don't know, like I think I look at Manifest Armor and I love it so much, but I know it must go in its current state. It's just like it's like that meme where the dude's like crying and he's holding the gun. He's like, I'm so sorry. You have to go.
All right.
You're too good. But that's like the thing. It's like, sure, like Erasing Strike is a one-trick pony right now with the Void Essence stuff, right? Sure.
Yeah, it is.
Cool. But at least it works. Like at least it works.
All right,
and
so
you had fun with Shield Throw. You know how Shield Throw is.
Did I? Okay, so we have lots and lots of opinions on this, and it makes me feel like every day could be a podcast if we tried hard enough. But I want to move on to something else. So we're a little over an hour into the podcast. We're an hour and 13 minutes. We started out talking about like what we've been doing. We talked about how was patch 1.1, and we just finished talking about a smattering of topics there. We had EHG Justin pop in a chat, tell us about volatile reversal. So I want to talk about here for the rest of the podcast, I think, what do we want to see in patch 1.2? You and I are already looking at variety content for our streams and for YouTube. We want to take a break. We want to go do something else. But like, let's do like a little vibe check right now. What are we looking forward to?
I think the thing in front for me, like that's just like the most important thing would be if they are going to nerf things into the ground and they want a specific, like, I would try to figure out what they want for damage and like acceptable amounts of damage, like figure out like something that they want, right? Like, what do they want? What do they think is an acceptable amount of damage? Because we can talk about, oh, this and that and this and that, but like, what do they think, right? What do they think is an acceptable amount of damage? What do they think is an acceptable Aberoth time? Because these are the things that will be important later, because what's happening right now is as they've been adding things have been going up and then they target nerf things down. But where are they, like there needs to be kind of like an equilibrium. Like for instance, like I said, remember I was talking about like Cinder Strike, and I was like, well, they buffed bosses and boss HP and all this, but Cinder Strike is just sitting there just crying in the corner, right? It's like what do they want?
It's melee and it's attack speed build, like you need high uptime.
I think what I would like, if they're gonna do this kind of stuff, I would like them to nerf, like if they're gonna nerf stuff, also look at
sorry, nerf
HP,
what? I missed that. Nerf what?
Just everything. If they nerf things, like if, they are, by the way, like for instance, if you nerf volatile reversal, maybe go and look at how much base HP some of the harbingers have. Like for instance, right now, as it currently stands, I don't know about you, I don't even touch the lith ones, like the small ones. I don't even touch them.
I genuinely fuck them. I literally do not do that content.
They have so much HP,
and they move so much. They're so stupid. Yeah.
Yeah, like I just don't even want to touch them, like at all.
Completely agree with you.
Because of how much HP they have, and I think that thanks to the fact the boss ward system is working too damn well, if that makes sense. It's working too damn well where bosses just have too much HP. I would just, since they have the boss ward system, just reduce the amount of HP they have, like the base amount. Sure. That's all I want to see.
So like
reduce it just by a little bit.
That's what you want to see. So I'm going to talk about like the next thing I want to see, and like maybe you can like come up with like the next thing that you'd like to see in 1.2 as I talk. So the first thing that I wrote down was arena echoes. So I feel like we've talked about this enough.
Didn't we bully Mike enough?
We bullied Mike just a little bit about this, and we've talked about it on Reddit. We talked about it on social media, like on Twitter and Discord and whatnot. Like arena echoes, they take longer. They are boring, they're slow, they're less rewarding, and the new exciting mechanics like Nemesis literally don't spawn in them. Like, I don't want these because of so many reasons. They either need to be faster or rewarding, or something's got to change. There's so many levers that you could pull, but please change something with arena echoes. That's what I want to see in 1.2, because it's going to have good ripple effects across like many different things, like how I feel emotionally while I'm farming the game. Hopefully, if they change arena echoes, maybe it also changes Arena of Champions. Maybe it makes that less painful.
Wouldn't it be cool if arena, if it just stayed how it was, if it was just like the way you farm favor? Like
sure, yeah, whatever. Just change something.
If they had a purpose, I wouldn't mind their existence. Yeah.
All right, that's what I got. What would you like to see during 1.2?
I think I would sit back and look at how more damage across trees, and how, like, I've talked about this in the past, but essentially, like, kind of just think about what the future is going to be for skill scaling, like added damage effectiveness. Like, what do you guys think? Because like I said, whenever I like play PoE and then I look at LE, I'm just like, wow, this is like literally, like, I feel like someone who like went to school for math, did all these numbers, are like very particular. They're like do right, and there's only a few things. But like when I look at LE, it's like all over the place. It's like Cinder Strike versus like Frostclaw versus like like multi-shot versus like Hail of Arrows. Like why is my multi-shot character with like 3 times the amount of gear doing 1,000,000 ticks on the dummy, while like my Hail of Arrows with very little investment in effort is doing like 3 to 4 million ticks? Like, why is that even allowed to be a thing? Like, why is the margins of like damage so absurdly high that it makes things look pathetic in comparison? Like I would like there to be just a hard look at what do we want in terms of damage. Like we'll put it on like a board, be like, hey, what are we doing? That'd be great.
All right. So my next one for 1.2 is something that Justin just mentioned in chat, and that is the volatile reversal rework. Like, I love Sentinel. Someone in my Twitch chat said this like a week or two ago. They said, I like Sentinel, but I don't want to solve so many problems. I don't want to have to fix my percent increased damage. I don't want to have to fix my crit. I don't want to have to fix how much damage I take. I don't want to have to use all these items to get damage reduction. I don't want to have to fix so many problems as compared to like these other classes where they just, they use Flame Ward and they play the game. Like I want to, and that's kind of it's a slightly different issue, but like, so I like Sentinel. That's what I'm trying to say. I like Sentinel. It's frustrating right now, but Volatile Reversal is one of those things that really feels good, and I love that. It's one of the things that makes me want to play Sentinel, even though it's kind of mid, honestly. It kind of sucks. If they're going to rework it, they're looking at increasing, more multipliers across the board. You and I have both been playing crit Sentinels recently, avoiding specifically damage over time, because damage over time Sentinels get so much more out of Volatile Reversal than crit builds do.
Yeah.
So like,
oh yeah, for
they
sure.
they know
Especially
that
melee builds
Yeah.
with the ring. Yeah.
Yeah, they know that. So that's on the radar. Could they possibly add enough damage to make up for how OP Volatile Reversal is? I don't know. I'm curious, but like that's a lot of numbers.
I mean, it would require like Frost Claw levels of things where like all of a sudden when you cast shield throw, you cast 3 shield throws instead.
Well, that almost sounds
Or,
fun.
like,
So we can't have that.
Exactly. It's like that's like the kind of thing that like is like, for instance, imagine if Sijian's Reprisal said, if you blocked recently, you get you cast 3 instead of just 1.
Sick.
I would love that Sijian's Reprisal.
Yeah.
I want that one.
All right, so Volatile Reversal rework. You and I are both looking for that. What's the next thing you're looking for in 1.2? Oh, I got more. Do you want me to go again?
This is a tangent to
That's okay. That's okay.
to the damage thing. The looking at added damage effectiveness versus ailment application rate. 'Cause
Yes.
we have ailment application rate in the game. It exists with Flurry and Warpath. Look into that a little bit, because it would be nice to play an Earthquake like bleed or ignite build and not be joking.
Yes. Yeah. So
especially with the boss HP changes, like especially like it's just go ahead.
Ignite EQ is a huge meme. Like there are Ignite nodes, you can take them. They're terrible because EQ has huge damage effectiveness. It has hit damage modifiers. It has aftershock modifiers. But like, what about your damage over time? What about EQ is a big bonky skill. Let it have, instead of like the 60% ailment effectiveness that Umbral Blades and Warpath have, just let it have like 500% ailment effectiveness.
They could have a lot of fun with this.
They could, yeah.
Like for instance, imagine there's a node. Imagine Umbral Blades, right? Has the 40% less chance to apply ailments on hit, and has the added damage 60%. And what they could do is they could just add a node that just says your Umbral Blades have less added, like has -2 added damage effectiveness per point of dexterity, and has 2% extra like scaling with ailments.
Does that thing still exist in Path of Exile? It's like Perfect Agony or something?
Yeah.
It kind of sounds like that, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's like for instance, imagine the node in Multi-Shot just says like 80% less added damage effectiveness instead of 80% less ailment effectiveness or whatever. Like, and then that build could actually be good. Like stuff like that. And like I'm thinking like Dancing Strikes is a huge problem in this. Like for instance, like imagine if Dancing Strikes had like 300% added damage effectiveness and 300% increased application of ailments. So every single time you would hit something with Dancing Strikes, which is insanely slow, by the way, it applied 3 times that amount of ailment.
Sure.
That would make Dancing Strikes not shit.
That'd be cool. That sounds good to me. We've seen good Dancing Strike builds, but like what? There's so much wiggle room to play with these skills.
And you could put it into the trees too. Like you can have like a node that just says like, for instance, the Scorpion Arrow node, instead of it giving 200% poison chance for the explosion, it just says like for every point of dexterity, right, you get 2% extra additional ailment effectiveness with detonating arrow, and then 2% negative hit damage effectiveness or whatever. And like things that just scale with the nodes in the tree, or like things that just like that. I think like for instance, like an Earthquake node that just literally just says, like the ignite says, instead of it just giving you a bunch of ignite chance, it just says like, hey, ailment effectiveness on the skill is like plus like 300%, but you do no damage with hits.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like fine.
It's one of the things that I like so much about Last Epoch. Like I've been playing for quite a while now. You even longer than me. But like when you start doing armchair dev, and someone on Reddit's going to tell me I don't like the armchair dev, it's like no, I literally enjoy this. Don't take it away from me.
I don't like doing the armchair dev because I'm always more of just I like to accept what it is kind of person. I don't like to like think about a future where like there's unicorns and fairies and stuff.
Oh,
like
I'm the father of a 2-year-old. I like unicorns and mermaids, baby. So when I start to think about what could be in the future of Last Epoch, it's so easy to get carried away because there's so many things they can do. Like Last Epoch has an amazing skeleton for a game. It has had it. It does have it right now. It needs more meat on the bones. It needs more refinement, but the skeleton's amazing. And I start thinking about something that they've teased for coming in patch 1.4 called skill sigils. And like, what if this is what skill sigils do? What if skill sigils are like, oh, you put in like the crit skill sigil or the ailment skill sigil or the dot or the hit. And like, okay, you put in the dot one, all those more multipliers become something like you were just talking about, where like EQ becomes like an ailment skill instead. Like, yeah, this is exactly the kind of thing that might be coming our way. I love it.
Yeah, I agree. I like it too.
Cool. All right. So other things we're looking for. I feel like my last 3 that I wrote down for 1.2 stuff, they're kind of gimmies. One of them was favor gain. We talked about this already.
Well, I mean, they could. I think instead of changing the favor gain, they could just make the favor costs on CLF just not absurd.
Yeah. You can do that if you want to change that lever instead. That sounds great.
Yeah. Like for MG, I think it feels fine. For MG, I think favor feels fine. Good. Like I'm not like it feels like a fair amount of work for a fair amount of like it only takes me like an hour or less than that to get a few 3LP items. I'm fine with that. Sure. Cool. Like I'm fine with that. Like good. Cool. Like MG's fine. They just need to change the lever for CLF.
The second to last one that I have is such a gimme. It's just like performance. I would like to see performance. So I told you earlier, I open up my stash, my stash, my hideout, and it takes 5 seconds. I'm just, oh, there it is. Okay, now.
COF player.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so it just, I don't want this. I want perform. You know, a lot of people have performance issues, even with the performance thing that you just put out in your YouTube community post about like the cores or the using all of the cores.
That's a band-aid. That's not a
that's
not a fix.
Yeah, like something, you know, it's built on Unity. They're kind of in bed with Unity at this point. They can't just get a new engine or something, but I hope that they still have levers to pull in terms of performance.
I think they talked about that a little bit. They said that they're doing something for next patch.
Love it.
I think they did talk about that a little bit.
So my last thing that I want to see for 1.2 is like super straightforward. You're gonna laugh at how dumb it is, but is there anything you want to put in there first?
No, I'm good.
1.2. All right, 1.2. Yeah. We had a podcast a while ago with who was it? I think it was The Curse, and we had him in here, and we were like getting all hyped up for 1.0. We're like, hey baby, what do you want to see for the new patch? Like, do you want to see this? Do you like 1.0? It's the big patch, the final launch, and he said bug fixes. And it's like, dude, read the room.
That's just it's so I don't know how to feel about this because it's just like I don't know if I've ever played a game with this many. Now that might be because
you're knowledgeable.
Well, it's because I like it's like knowing physics. So like when you see, it's like being like going to college for physics. So if you see like the table start floating in your kitchen room, you're just like, that shouldn't be doing that.
Well, it's like
you just be like,
it's like you have your master's in physics and then you go back to like a middle school's physics class, and it's like, well, actually, what the teacher is saying is wrong. I was like, well, that's wrong. I was like, well, that's wrong too. Like, yeah, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to be able to look at something like, for instance, I was playing Path of Exile, okay? And I was playing the Poison Firestorm build with the boots that like apply the grasping vines. I was like so worried before the patch started. I was like, oh, is this anoint gonna work on launch? Like, is this interaction gonna work? Is it gonna? It worked perfectly fine. I'm just like, oh god, the PTSD is getting to me. it's like I'm like thinking of it like it's LE. Like for instance, with Avalanche, I'm like, oh, is Avalanche actually gonna work?
Like,
Spoilers, there were bugs, but like,
it's hard. Like you have people like you and I who've been playing for literally thousands of
mm,
hours, and someone says, "Hey, does this node work?" And like I feel like I've finally trained myself where I instead of saying yes or no, I just say like, "It should." I think.
it
I think
should.
so.
It should.
Someone
Yeah.
someone asked weeks ago. They said, "Hey, who's got the biggest brain in Last Epoch? Who's like the biggest Giga Chad person who knows the most, and like who's the biggest brain?" And the answer, I think the answer is still right now. The person with the biggest brain in Last Epoch is the person who's willing to bug test their whole build. If you're willing to sit there at the test dummy and just test every node, it's boring. But like that's it. Just go do it. That's what it takes.
That's actually what I do before I make a build. I go through on a character and I'm just like, all right, does this work? Does that work? Am I going to waste 8 hours of my life before knowing that this is like that? Like I try to do that, but I still get screwed over.
And like the training dummy is hard because instead of just like crits or non-crits or a bunch of different numbers showing up, you have the damage variance built into the game.
That was so. I still don't like that. I'm sure it was for performance reasons, by the way.
The damage
But I
variance.
still don't like that. No, the damage colliding when you do both damage at once.
Oh yeah, yep.
Like that has caused so many problems.
It's something like if you deal like
sometimes-
more than 10 hits in like 0.2 seconds or something, like those numbers get
Yeah.
combined. Yeah.
and it causes a lot of problems for bug testing in general, because it's like I would like it if it was an option. Maybe an option would be nice, and like
Yeah.
the settings, that'd be great. Or it's just like
For the people out there who are willing to bug test stuff, people like you or people like the Curse who does a lot of bug testing as well. People like half of my Twitch chat apparently love bug testing stuff. But for those people, it'd be nice if we had better tools at the dummy. What if damage variance didn't exist? What if this numbers colliding didn't exist? What if we had more dummies to test with? Like if we had stuff like that, then people could make better bug reports and we could let people know what's going on with the game. That'd be like more bug testing tools. Honestly, that'd be really nice.
God. I remember that moment, Valinov. Valinov just posted in chat. He's like, one of my favorite moments with you, Dread, was when you were building around Avalanche Coldstone golems. Then you found out they didn't scale with attributes. Which, by the way, if you're wondering, minions care about attributes insanely, like a lot, because that's how they get their HP scaling, so they don't just fall over in the game. And like, it's just like, imagine like you were playing your build and percent damage wasn't working for some reason.
Cool.
It's like, whoa! It was fun.
All right. It feels feels lame to say it, but to some degree, like there's bugs that have been in the game for a long time, and either codify them and change the wording and just say like it's a feature. Just acknowledge it and say it's a feature so people know what to expect.
All features.
It's fine. It's always has been.
Oh yeah, shield
always
rush,
has been.
Sticking you in place. That's the downside for it doing damage.
Or like Shadow Cascade proccing off of shift even if you're not dual wielding. Like it works with bows.
Overleech should stay in the game. I know you guys think it's OP, but like Leech is OP in general. But like I like having good sustain on my builds. Thank you. I hate having bad sustain.
But I like when player expectations line up with what's written in the game. Like you don't need to go to a third-party website. Last Epoch has in-game loot filters. It has in-game game guides. Use them. Like we already changed the boss DR stuff. If you want Shadow Cascade to proc off of shift, write it there.
That's so funny. We were talking about bugs and all this, and he said overleech, and I thought he meant about the fact that you could run the degen mod on your gloves and then leech.
He's talking about a different bug. No, he's talking about a different
one. He's talking about overleech, still overleeching, even though you say can't leech or whatever.
Yes.
So you can't play low life builds with certain items or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. God.
Cool.
That's great. Yeah.
But or other bugs that have been in the game for a long time. Like I was playing a low life build and I wanted to turn off all my leech, so I used an item that turns off leech, but I was still leeching because of a bug that's been in the game since like, was it 3 years? I think it was like since 1.0 or something.
Like 99% of the time would be like beneficial too. It's
Yeah,
like it would be beneficial most of the time.
it's like there's some old bugs in Last Epoch, and maybe just working through the backlog is that it's asking too much. Like, come on, developer,
Yeah.
fix your bug. It
You
feels
just
such
like
a it's
hire
such a
like 20 people. You just hire 20 people to bug test,
it
and then
feels
you
like
fire them after it's over.
it feels like such a stupid thing to say like, oh, I'm looking for bug fixes, but there's a big disparity in what's written in the game and what's actually the case, and even experienced players like you and I don't always know the answer, and that is frustrating, and it's becoming a reputation for Last
Yeah.
Epoch. And like, I
Yeah,
don't want that
like that part,
persist.
by the way. I don't like that part.
The reputation,
becoming a rep. Yeah,
yeah,
like,
that's dangerous.
I feel it too. I feel it. Yeah, it is dangerous. Like, remember, Wilson died for these things. Like, obviously, in Wilson it was worse, but Ellie's had its fair share of Wilson level bugs, like the 40k ward, like Bone Curse minion profane.
Oh,
Veil
where the
things.
decimal point was in the wrong place.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
cool.
that's a Wilson level bug, and if it was like if there was any other problems with 1.0 other than that, like it would have sucked for them. Like that's the kind of thing that just like if there's enough of those things, people will notice and they will talk about it.
All right. We've been talking for about an hour and a half at this point. We worked through the second part of this podcast a lot faster than I thought we were going to, but I think an hour and a half is a good amount of time for someone to listen to something or watch something. Dread, are there any final thoughts for like what's going on right now? What you've been like looking at in 1.1, looking forward to in 1.2? Are we actually playing?
This will be good for now, I think, because I gotta go make dinner.
Are we really playing Stellaris?
Yeah, we can play Stellaris.
So we're playing Stellaris at some point? Okay, cool. I don't know anything about that game. Apparently it's good.
It's okay. We'll figure it out.
It
is good. Just thankfully you won't have to buy it, so.
Oh, free video games, baby.
It's a Paradox game. You know how Paradox games go, right?
Nope.
Okay, essentially imagine if you bought the game, you're like, oh, it's $15 on sale, it's great. And then you go look, oh, by the way, you need like 30 DLCs to make it like the full experience, by the way.
No. That sucks.
Thankfully, I have those, so you don't have to deal with that.
Oh, good.
But
cool. All right. So we're gonna play some variety games in the future. We got like one build left. I'm still working on my thing right now. What is it? BBC?
I'm working on Bleed Hail Veros myself.
Yeah. We're both playing Rogues to round out the 1.1 patch.
Yeah, of course.
Love it. All right, Dread, thank you for your time. Listen, if you're watching this later on Twitch or on Spotify, let us know where you're consuming this content, and we'll make sure that the viewing and listening experience is as good as possible. This has been episode 53 for patch 1.1 of Rat City Radio. Dread, thanks for being here. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.